From the latest on Caribbean cruises to kosher safaris, pilgrimages to Jewish Eastern Europe, and award-winning wines and international cuisine in sun-drenched Tel Aviv. Sit back and enjoy the trip with the travel edition of the Jerusalem Post podcast.
Welcome, listeners in podcast land. How are you? I'm Mark Gordon, and I'm here with my travel buddy and Bezzy mate, David Harris.
Oh, nobody's ever said that to me. Not since I was a little boy.
Of course you're my Bezzy mate. We go on holidays together.
We do. In fact, you probably remember one that we just did to Abu Dhabi. More on that later in the year. And we're about to go on another one, but we aren't going to give you any clues about that right now.
Lewandowski.
Okay, that's a clue. But outside of all of our lovely travel jaunts for this podcast, where's the ideal summer vacation for you, given that we're entering the summer period?
Well, I said Lewandowski for a reason, because this summer there is football. And it's Euro 2020, even though it's 2021.
That's soccer for American listeners.
Yes, we're not going to pick up the ball. It's soccer. And that is a festival of football over a month between June and July in, I think, 11 different destinations around Europe. And I would love to go to all of them and watch the football.
But instead, you'll probably be sitting in front of your goggle box watching on TV.
I'll be in the armchair with a bottle of beer having fun.
Around the world, people often travel based on weather patterns. So it's known that if you live in the Northeast America and also in Canada and you can afford to travel, you're going to head to Florida. I'm sure many of our listeners do go to Florida each year for the winter. And a lot of people head to the sun in the summer. Given that we live in Israel, my desire is to get away from the heat and head to Scandinavia.
Iceland.
Iceland would be amazing in the summer. I mean, that's the sort of direction. So if you have a particular favourite spot that you like to spend your summers or somewhere that you would long to go to, please, in reply to this podcast, if you're listening through a podcast provider or if you're listening on the Jerusalem Post website, just drop us a line. Let us know where it is that you would like to go. Mark, where are we off to for this edition of the podcast?
In this episode, we are travelling the breadth of the Northern Hemisphere. We're going east to Azerbaijan, and then we're going west to Victoria in British Columbia.
And here, as we always do at the top of the show, are a couple of quiz questions related to today's destinations.
Question number 1. True or false? There are more Azeris living in Iran than in Azerbaijan.
And question number 2. Victoria is the western terminus of which major road? The answers at the end of the podcast. I'm sure you've heard of the British actor Michael Caine. He's the one who played the butler in Batman, amongst many other roles. Mark,
not a lot of people know that.
I was just about to say, what is his catchphrase?
Don't throw bloody spears at me.
What's his catchphrase?
Not a lot of people know that.
And here's a fact that not a lot of people know. There is, high in the mountains of Azerbaijan, a Shtetl. An actual Shtetl. Imagine how things used to be in Lithuania, Poland, Ukraine, 200 years ago. There is a place like that today with a few thousand Jews.
Not a lot of people know that.
Exactly. So we wanted to find out a bit more about that and some other pieces of information about Azerbaijan.
Who are opening a tourism promotion office in Tel Aviv later this year. Florian Sengschmidt, the CEO of the Azerbaijan Tourism Board, told us why.
To answer that question properly, we need to get back in time a little bit and understand that Azerbaijan has been home for Jewish community since 19th century, has long been welcoming guests from Israel. For today, basically the Jewish community consists of around 16,000 people, with 11,000 of them being mountain Jews. The interesting fact is, what very few people know, is that more than 3,000 of them live together in Guba region in a settlement called Red Village, or Krasnaya Sloboda in Russian. And actually, this is the only shtetl of dense Jewish population outside of Israel and the US. Apart from that fact, both countries, Israel and Azerbaijan, enjoy very strong economic and diplomatic ties. Israel was among the first countries to formally also recognize Azerbaijan's independence in 1992. And this long-lasting strategic partnership between Azerbaijan and Israel is not only in the field of tourism, but trade, culture, education, security, agriculture, and many more. Due also to the very good connectivity which we had before the COVID pandemic, and which we assume will be reestablished soon with Israel Air and Arkia Airlines, connecting also Tel Aviv and Baku in less than 3 hours actually, is a great fundament of continuing and strengthening the ties between our destinations. And we can't wait actually also to soon again promote Azerbaijan as a tourism destination and attract many Israeli tourists to visit and some unforgettable experiences here in the country.
You gave so much in that first answer. You've stolen half of my questions, but I'm going to pick up on that ease of travel. A lot of our listeners are clearly very savvy. They're listening to a travel podcast, therefore we assume that you folks out there listening know quite a bit about travel. But I'm imagining that a lot of people, if we showed them a blank map of the world, wouldn't know where Azerbaijan was. So you've talked about the ease of arrival in Azerbaijan for Israelis. What about Europeans, and also a big chunk of our listeners are North Americans? How do they get to you?
The location is very convenient, not only for Israelis traveling to here, but also for Europeans and travelers from North America. Best connections is currently via the hubs of Dubai, Istanbul, and Moscow. Basically, also have seen that connections via Dubai have been recently established, very convenient. Azal also was operating, Azerbaijan Airlines, Azal was operating a flight, also a non-stop flight between New York and Baku before COVID. So obviously, due to the pandemic, international travel restrictions, some of these flights have been temporarily cancelled, but we are positive that as soon as borders reopens, also these connections will be re-established.
How would you define Baku? Is it more Eastern or more Western? Is it a modern city, an ancient city, or does it have just that little bit of everything?
It's really a beautiful mix. Is a very contemporary city filled with this amazing and fascinating history. So it really seamlessly blends this East and West and modern and traditional. Interesting fact, Baku is located 28 meters below the sea level. So this is the lowest lying capital city in the world, and is also the largest and most vibrant city on the Caspian Sea. Let me start with the more traditional or the eastern part. Baku's historical center, Ichere Sheher, or you would say the old town, is a walled city, is narrow streets and paths and ancient buildings, landmarks. The Maiden Tower is there, overseeing the Caspian Sea and the boulevard. The Shirvanshah Palace is there. So this old part of the city and the ancient Baku is really, you dive into like drinking a glass of tea, carpets, having a local sitting and playing chess and other games, board games on the street. So it's a travel to the past, and is also this ancient part of the city is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Then in the mid 19th century, and when Baku really was visited, and a lot of people moved to Baku during the oil industry boom, the city grew beyond these ancient fortress walls. Many people arrived, many of them made enormous fortunes, and they have built really opulent mansions, public buildings in a great mixture of styles, earning also Baku this nickname of Paris of the Caucasus. Then basically you go a little bit further out of that style of the oil boom style, and you end up in 21st century Baku. Famous architect Zaha Hadid's Heydar Aliyev Center, amazing building, no straight lines, curves. Feels like really something has landed in Baku from outer space, an amazing architectural masterpiece, among many others. Another example is the carpet museum in the shape of a carpet rolled up, is located on the Baku seaside boulevard, a beautiful area to stroll around, a lot of outdoor cafes and restaurants, and you really feel like strolling this boulevard, how inspiring, dazzling, busy, and vibrant the city feels. And also being the largest city on the Caspian, with the recent opening, for example, of Tennis Mall, the largest entertainment and shopping complex in the Caucasus, it offers also a lot of conveniences for shoppers, for business travelers.
You talked at the start about the Jewish community. Are there anything like a Jewish walking tour in Baku itself?
Yes, there is. Azerbaijan is also known for its history, where more than 20 national minorities have been living for many years. Jews are the ones who really maintained their culture, traditions, religion, language here in the country. Mainly, basically, when we talk about Jewish heritage in Azerbaijan, we can look at it in three ethnic subgroups: Mountain Jews, Ashkenazi, and Georgian Jews. Interesting also in the southern region of Azerbaijan, you would still find Subotniks and Gers. These are groups of ethnic Russians practicing Judaism. And all this Jewish heritage basically is presented also, like from our side, in a wonderful brochure, depending on where you go. For example, in Guba, in Red Village, we have recently opened, in cooperation with the Embassy of the State of Israel, a nice walking tour. There is a beautiful museum in the Red Village. And also in Baku, we are working on opening a Jewish heritage walk through the city, basically a walking tour with some podcast, audio files you can download, and with extended maps. So you really is a walk yourself tour for those who have some spare time. Also for locals, we want to open this heritage and this historic part of the city to dive into the Jewish heritage in Azerbaijan.
Can you tell us something about the food scene of Azerbaijan? Where can we go and get dinner after a long walk?
Food is like another religion practiced in Azerbaijan. It's really spectacular fusion of flavors. All different cultures who once traveled along the Great Silk Road is what you would find in the Azerbaijani cuisine. Let's start with the breakfast. The breakfast consists of a lot of different types of cheese and dairy products, sweet butter, honey, jam, eggs with tomato scrambled, and not to forget the all-time favorite, the tendir, traditional warm, crispy bread with the heavenly aroma from these traditional also ovens. For lunch, dinner, you would go for a traditional pilaf. There is hundreds different types of this saffron-flavored rice cooked with herbs, fried meat, vegetables, dried fruits, and different spices. Or you go for the various kinds of kebabs, different type of meat. And dolma is another minced lamb meat, rice infused with herbs, spices, then wrapped in these beautiful wine leaves or grape leaves. Another favorite is the kutab. Kutab is looks like a pancake and is filled either with meat, cheese, or pumpkin, or with herbs. The herb version basically contains more than, I think, 30 different types of herbs and greens cut in there. This is my recommendation when it comes to the dishes. Azerbaijan is also famous for its wine production. Very few people can relate wine to Azerbaijan, although years ago, when the South Caucasus was not divided into nation states, this area here is very famous for its rich soil, black soil, and its endemic sorts and varieties here. Now, today, there is about 17 wineries in the country, and they're producing, apart from well-known grapes, international Merlot, Chardonnay, etc., also a great variety of really these locally endemic grapes. My personal favorite, Bayan Girard, a very dry, light, crispy white wine for the hot summer months. Kosher food is also available in Azerbaijan, can be widely found. This is also related to a lot of Israeli tourists visited the country in the past, especially past 2 years with great airline connectivity. So restaurants, cafe owners really have understood that. And there is also for kosher food, special restaurants collaborating with the Jewish community to basically serve kosher food.
We're lost for words. We don't know whether we want the Carpet Museum first or to just eat. Can you just provide lots of food in the Carpet Museum? And then that way the two of us will be happy for the rest of our lives. Florian Segschmidt, CEO of Azerbaijan Tourism Board. The pleasure truly has been ours. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Azerbaijan Fact File. The main airport is the Heydar Aliyev Airport in Baku. Azerbaijan Airlines flies to Baku from London, New York, Paris and Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is also served by a direct Israel flight. Lufthansa, Air France, Turkish and major Gulf Airways also serve the airport. It takes around 20 minutes from the airport to the city centre by car or bus. There are shuttle buses on the route from the airport to downtown, as well as taxis available at the entrance to the terminal. You can also use Bolt or Uber. Baku has an underground metro, public buses and taxis. For inter-regional travel, it's possible to rent a car or buy a ticket for inter-regional bus rides. Baku has global hotel chains like Marriott, Hilton, Four Seasons, Fairmont and soon-to-be-opened IHG and Ritz-Carlton. For those wishing to take a rest from the busy city life, large resorts and spas offering numerous health treatments await them in picturesque surroundings. $1 will buy you 1.7 Azerbaijan manat. The climate of Azerbaijan can be described as continental influenced, with warm summers and very cold, dry winters. Maximum temperatures vary between 7 Celsius 45 Fahrenheit in January to 31 Celsius 88 Fahrenheit in July and August. Azerbaijani cuisine is replete with lots of vegetables and beans. Rice and products made from flour are widely used in national cuisine, and the majority of Azeri dishes are made with lamb, beef or poultry meat. Kosher food is available from 740 restaurants at 25 Samadvogun Street in Baku.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition, and now it's time for the news. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has eased travel recommendations for dozens of countries. Countries ranked lowest for COVID-19 risks now include Singapore, Israel, South Korea, Iceland, Belize and Albania.
Remember Concorde? Well, United Airlines just announced it plans on purchasing 15 supersonic jets from Denver-based Boom Supersonic. The agreement is dependent on the Overture aircraft meeting United's safety and sustainability requirements. If the deal proves successful, United is ready to purchase a further 35 planes.
Anyone arriving in Israel must now pay for their COVID tests at Ben Gurion Airport. The new regulation came into force on June the 1st. Likewise, the Israeli health funds are now allowed to charge their members for PCR tests ahead of trips overseas.
After a long break, the Birthright program that brings young Americans to Israel has finally resumed. So far, the organisation has brought some 750,000 young adults to see Israel, most of them for the first time.
Yeah, we're going to do a song called Oseh Shalom. And this is actually by a Jerusalem-based group called Nava Tehillah. So, thanks to that's their melody, their tune. And here we go.
That's Gary Cohen and Amber Woods, the Victoria, British Columbia-based duo known as Couscous. Not only do they entertain, they are also tour guides to Jewish Victoria. Gary told us about his family company, Discover the Past.
Discover the Past is a family-owned local walking tour company. Now, my partner, Amber, gives tours of the synagogue here under the auspices of Congregation Emmanuel, and as well at the Jewish cemetery for the Old Cemetery Society. In addition to that, we are a musical duo called Couscous, spelt with a K.
Two Ks.
Two Ks, two Ks. There you are. And we specialize in the music of the Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and Mizrahi traditions, as well as music from the Francophone world.
So for our listeners who might not know too much about Victoria, why would they want to visit?
We have a temperate climate, and for that reason it's been referred to as the City of Gardens. There are many beautiful gardens within the city in the greater Victoria area. One of the more famous commercial gardens is the Butchart Gardens. There's other ones as well. There's Government House, where the Lieutenant Governor lives, and they have a beautiful gardens around there. And there are many others as well. Yeah.
And the Queen stays when she comes.
That's right. Yeah, when the royal family visits, that's where they stay.
And they have a tea house, so the chef that makes for the Queen will make for you.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, in the summer.
Right.
And the vista is amazing.
Yeah. If you're into outdoor activities, this is a great place. We have kayaking. There are about hundreds of small islands near Victoria, so it's really a kayaking paradise. There's access to coastal and mountain scenery. We have the famous Juan de Fuca hiking trail and the more famous West Coast Trail, basically. There's also the history as well. The oldest Chinatown in Canada is here, and the number of fun festivals, summer festivals as well. Well, for you, I guess you could have high tea at the Empress Hotel. So I guess you're really waiting for that there. Okay.
When did Jews first arrive, and how did the community establish itself in the early years?
The first official records of Jews coming to Victoria is in 1858. There may have been Jews coming earlier, but we know for sure they came in 1858. Victoria's on Vancouver Island, and the mainland is separate but connected, by ferry. And the gold was discovered on the mainland in 1858. So that was actually corresponded with the time that the gold rush in California was petering out. So, and there was all hundreds of miners just waiting for the next place where there would be gold, and happened to be here. So the summer of 1858, between 20 and 30,000 people came to Victoria, which had been established by the Hudson's Bay Company in 1843 as the western headquarters of their company. It was a slow, sleepy town, self-sufficient. Nothing was happening. It was basically an outpost of an outpost. No one knew about it. And then suddenly all these people just descended. And that number was a few Jews. They came in 1858, but by 1859, there was enough Jewish men to form a minyan. Once you have a minyan, then you start to make a community. In 1863, in June, they had this very huge cornerstone laying ceremony. All these dignitaries were invited. They all came. It was a big deal. 2 cornerstones were laid. Why 2? Because they asked the Freemasons to lay a cornerstone. Jews were heavily involved in the Masonic Lodge here. And then the committee thought, oh, is that going to be kosher? If they lay for us, does that make it kosher? So to be extra careful, they also the congregation laid. So the ceremony included 2 cornerstones laying. This is and remember, this is June. By Rosh Hashanah that year, they're praying. June, July, August, September.
Wow.
Amazing.
Am I right in saying that this is the oldest still operating synagogue in Canada and along the west coast of North America?
The distinction is that we're the oldest synagogue building in continuous use. So it's the continuous use that's the issue. They're definitely older buildings in Toronto and Montreal. But what happened in Toronto and Montreal is that in the 70s, the Jews moved out from the downtown. They moved into the burbs. They sold the building and they made their shul in their hood. And we were tempted to do that here in the 1970s, but we were dissuaded from that. And instead, the community decided to do some renovations to the building because it was kind of a mess at the time. And so since 1863, there have been services every week in that shul. Even, and this blows my mind, in the turn of the century, there were about 7 Jewish families, and they kept the building open. And it's till COVID that we're not in the building so much. We're doing Zoom. so it counts. But and sometimes from the sanctuary itself. But other than that, I mean, every week there's been services there for 150, how many years? Since 1863. You can do the math yourself.
Wonderful story. Gary, back to you. Where do you visit on the city tour?
We offer 3 tours. One is a walking tour where I, under the auspices of Discover the Past, we follow in the footsteps of some of the Jewish merchants of early Victoria. So that's what we do on that tour. On the synagogue tour, which is offered by Amber.
No, the congregation. I'm one of the tour guides.
Yeah, okay. Offered during the summer and by arrangement. It's about an hour long and tells the story of the oldest synagogue, well, just as you were talking about.
But in more detail.
Yeah, but in much, much more detail. And it's run by the congregation. Now, and Amber leads a tour of the Jewish cemetery. Amber has published a book on the Jewish cemetery. Arrangement can be made through her Jewish history website.
Or you can just buy the book because it's a walking tour in itself.
Yeah. And the site is jewishvictoria.wordpress.com. I think word. Okay, all right. All right.
How many wood presses would a wood press chuck?
Yeah, if a wood press could chuck words.
Okay.
Can you tell us a bit about the Jewish infrastructure in Victoria today, particularly if visitors want to keep kosher?
Well, we have the Jewish Community Center, which includes a deli called Lock, Stock, and Barrel.
Great.
Yeah, great name, eh? Yeah. And it's kosher style. It's and right now they're offering a takeout.
They also have, if you are Glock kosher, they do have the Glock kosher meals with the hechsher and everything in the foil, but it is warmed up in their oven. So it would depend on how strict you are in terms of that, but the meal itself is Glock kosher.
As well, we have Chabad of Vancouver Island. They're everywhere. Chabad, and they help look after people who keep all their kosher needs. And we have several congregations. We have the Kolot Mayim Reform Temple. There's, of course, Chabad. And there's also an egalitarian conservative synagogue, which we've mentioned, called Congregation Emmanuel. And there's also an ad hoc group that meets occasionally, which offers a more secular approach. There's also the Jewish Federation of Victoria and Vancouver Island, Hillel, which of course are the university students. They do have a chapter at the University of Victoria. And we have various Jewish social service agencies. And there's one store called Aubergine, which carries kosher foods.
You're very clever marketers because you've already mentioned one of the websites and now you get a chance to do it a second time. How can people get hold of you?
We have a number of websites. One is discoverthepast.com.
That's for the walking tours?
Yeah. There's, of course, congregationemmanuel.ca. There's Jewish Victoria. Oh, I mentioned that one. WordPress. Again, of course. Yeah, that's right. WordPress.com. And Couscous Music with 2 Ks.
K-O-U-S,
music.com.
That's ours.
Yeah.
That's ours personally.
Yeah.
Amber Woods and Gary Cohen, thank you so much.
Toda rabba. Thank you.
Victoria Fact File. There are float plane flights to Victoria downtown from downtown Vancouver and Seattle using harbourair.com. Victoria International Airport receives flights from across Canada and Seattle. Passengers and vehicles can take BC ferries from Vancouver to Victoria. Clipper Vacations offers a passenger-only catamaran from Seattle to Victoria. For hotel information, contact victoriatourism.com. The currency is the Canadian dollar. $1 will buy you 1.21 Canadian dollars. Kosher and Israeli products are available at Aubergine Specialty Foods, located at 1308 Gladstone Avenue. The JCC Victoria Lock, Stock and Bagel Deli offers Jewish-style food and is able to provide pre-packed kosher meals. Chabad of Victoria Island offers Orthodox prayer services.
Quiz answers coming up in a moment, but first, as ever, our thanks to today's guests, Florian, Gary, and Amber.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us...
Yes, I did.
Not just you, the listener out there.
Oh.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star rating. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all good podcast providers. And now the answers to our quiz questions.
Question number 1. True or false? There are more Azeris living in Iran than Azerbaijan. It's absolutely true. There are up to 14 million people of Azeri origin living in neighbouring Iran.
Question number 2. Victoria is the western terminus of which major road? And the answer is the Trans-Canada Highway.
And not a lot of people know that.
Don't throw bloody spears at me. I've been Michael Caine, and this has been my travel buddy, David Harris.
It's been a pleasure taking you around Azerbaijan and the west coast of Canada. See you the next time on the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.